start being a little careful
Okay,
about what
all right.
we were having a
We
fascinating,
got to put our mask on now, right?
yeah, the persona. Yeah, I'll
Right.
tell. Welcome, Facebook and YouTube. This is John Worley. He is airborne veteran, also a master of divinity.
That's one of my degrees.
One of your degrees, a psychologist, a doctor of psychology. And we started by talking about the psychology of airborne, the psychology of paratroopers, the unique temperament, character, personality maybe you need to do the behavior that is the airborne. And then we went off into a theological tangent. We'll spare everybody that conversation, but fascinating. I'm fascinated by this, John.
Well, I think getting back to the airborne concept is the thing about troopers. At the very core of a trooper is tenacity. And tenacity comes in various forms, but I think the psychology of tenacity is the bandwidth to endure psychological pain. Now, that comes in, it's not that they look for that psychological pain, it's that they can endure it.
They can endure it.
They can endure it. And that they have an intrinsic desire to pursue that because they have this high energy level. They are high accomplished individuals, and if they can accomplish and fulfill that need, that drive within them, then they go the opposite direction. And that's when you find the depressive element of society. Because
we got to go live. I'm sorry to interrupt you here, John. We've got to let everybody in from the Zoom room. Okay. It is past 8 o'clock. We'll continue that conversation.
Okay.
Hey, good evening and welcome everybody. Hello, Carol. How you guys doing? It's good evening. This is Todd. This is the VBC Happy Hour, the Veterans Breakfast Club. I'm Todd DiPastino. I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club. Today is Monday, August 18th, 2021. No, August 16th. Oh my gosh, 2021. It is National Airborne Day. And we have a good number of airborne veterans with us today. Pat Hughes, one of them, holding up his, let me see what that is there, airborne patch, Vietnam, and so we have airborne veterans. We're gonna talk with airborne veterans tonight. We have some new people joining us also, and in addition, from this day henceforth, I think August 15th and 16th will be known as the Fall of Kabul, the final end of the 20 years war in Afghanistan. I know that many of us, if not all of us, have been watching the news with a combination of shock and horror and fury, maybe, heartbreak, certainly for many of us. It's, I'm a historian, and there's an old George Santayana saying that those who don't know history are doomed or destined to repeat it. Rarely have I ever seen history repeated so shot for shot, word for word, as it has in the past few days. The parallels with the fall of Saigon are absolutely striking and distressing, I think is a word for it. And I know, we don't do politics here on the Veterans Breakfast Club ever. And I could certainly anticipate there will be a lot of partisan finger pointing. But I would suggest that we all realize that this is this failure that we're facing in Afghanistan is in fact a bipartisan failure. Democratic and Republican administrations have presided over it for 20 years. Just stunning development. And I do want to make sure that the OIF and OEF veterans who are with us tonight, if they care to share their feelings about what's going on, their thoughts, their reflections here at the 20th, the end of this 20 years war, I invite you to do so. And also Vietnam veterans they've seen this movie before, and it ended exactly the same way. And I know many of you Vietnam veterans are thinking about that also. So Vernon, yes, you have your hand up. Vernon Thorson. Vernon, I can't see you, but I think I could hear you. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm here from Texas.
Welcome from Texas. Are you airborne?
No, I'm not airborne. I'm in my house.
Okay. Good. You're on the ground.
That was good. That was good.
Okay. Let me put it this way. Are you a veteran?
I'm a retired veteran.
Retired. What branch of service?
I was in the United States Army there.
And what unit?
Oh, well, it was the 39th Engineer Battalion.
Okay.
I don't even think they're active anymore.
And when were you in the 39th?
Oh, this was back in 1975, I think.
Do you know what we call you around here then? A young guy. We call you a young guy.
Yeah, I guess so.
I see we have Julia Parsons with us, Vernon. She's 100 years old. She served in the Navy Waves in World War II. Jack Morrow, he's World War II also. Don Nemchek, he served in the Civil War, I think. I'm just kidding about that. But welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you joined us, Vernon.
Can you see me now?
No, we can't see you, but I could hear you fine.
Okay. Okay, great.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, sure. And I hope you hang with us and turn on your camera if you can, and chime in as you start hearing the stories. I know that there are some people joining us for the first time here. I was expecting and hoping that Matt Houston would be joining us. I'm not sure if he has. From Matt Houston, are you with us? We see you now, Vernon. There you are.
Yay.
Hey, Matt Houston with Wounded Heroes Hunting Camp. You are not with us. Hey, Elle and Sean, look out for Matt Houston if he joins us in the waiting room there.
Will do.
I'd love to have him talk. I do see Jason, however. Hello, Jason. I emailed Jason Mueller. Jason, okay, here's a good question. Why don't you unmute yourself and then you can answer this question. Your last name, Jason. Yes. There are different ways to pronounce it. Some people pronounce it Mueller, some people pronounce it Mueller, and some people pronounce it Miller. Which one do you do?
Mueller.
Mueller. Okay, Mueller. Yeah.
And Mueller. I've lived my life hearing the Ferris Bueller jokes. So
Jason is let me share my screen here. Jason is with Resiliency Among Warriors, correct? RAW, the RAW yes. program. You're a Marine yourself?
Yeah, a Marine. Once a Marine, always a Marine. So yeah.
And when were you in the Marine Corps?
I served from 97 to 2001. Suffered a back injury and had to get out in May of 2001.
In May of 2001. Oh my. Mm-hmm. So can I ask you, Jason, being a Marine, trained for war, you go in at 1997, in May of 2001, you get injured, you have to get out. How did you feel after 9/11 and the country goes to war and you're not part of it?
It's interesting because that's basically where RAW kind of was birthed out of all of that.
Yeah.
I learned years down the road that I was dealing with a lot of survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Because I knew a lot of men that I served with that continued on in their service, and I wasn't there to be with my brothers.
Yep.
I was an infantry Marine, so that's where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so, so that became pretty difficult place for me to be for a long time. But Now I realize my purpose here is with creating this resiliency among warriors to save the lives of my brothers and sisters now.
And Resiliency Among Warriors is part of the Stephen Wingfield Ministries. And where are you located? Where are you physically located, Jason?
So I'm actually in Richmond, Virginia. Wingfield Ministries is in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And so I partnered with Steve he's helped me to create this new division. Like I said, this has been on my heart for about 10 years, and I've been kind of putting it off, but I've been a full-time pastor. And so I've stepped away from full-time ministry in church to create this organization. Oh,
so you've really, you're putting everything into it now. You're a pastor.
Yeah, I'm all in. So
I'm
all about, all about inspiring veterans, military service members and their families to discover hope, healing, and their purpose. And it's not just, when I talk about family members, it's not just the spouses, our spouses and our children, but also our parents and our siblings, because they've been impacted by our service. And a lot of times they don't know how to navigate the relationships after we've returned from campaign or different things. So RAW is all about trying to get through get through all this together.
So it's for not only veterans, but military families, the whole, as it says here, to this whole military community.
Yes. And that's what we would classify as a warrior.
As the families are warriors also.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit? We talk a lot about it here, but it's I think it's very meaningful coming from somebody like you who thinks about this, 24/7. Can you explain a little bit the special circumstances or the challenges or stresses that military families face, when a loved one is deployed or just in the military?
It's been interesting. I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of Marines, because I'm near Quantico Marine Corps base. So I talked to them a lot, but what really kind of wrapped my head around it was a conversation I had with my mom not long ago in regards to the deployment I was on to Kuwait in 1998. And just, she watched CNN. I had no idea what was going on. I was in the middle of the Persian Gulf on a ship waiting to go into the desert to do training. And she just had those stresses. And I never took that into consideration with my military service. I just did what I was supposed to do, what I loved doing, being a Marine. And, so I learned through conversations with her, just kind of that element. Recently I talked with a young Marine, and he asked, I talked to him about the situation. He came back after being in Iraq for 2 deployments to Iraq and suffered a traumatic brain injury. It totally changed him. And unfortunately, he doesn't have the relationship with his parents and his siblings anymore, because they didn't know how to relate. They didn't know how to handle that. So we're actually reaching out to the family to try to bring them back together, to bring that family unit back to bring some healing there in those relationships.
Isn't that wonderful? Oh my gosh. And people can go to your website, rawarrior.org, and learn more and get connected and understand what you do. John Worley, you have a question.
I think he has a fabulous program. And, I think instead of looking at the Band-Aid, we need to look at the injury. And from my perspective, of course, I look at temperament. And I think we need to look at the damage that has been done to the intrinsic design of the person. That's where the value is, If you look at that and you see what's been skewed there, then you're going to be able to correct that. And once you correct that, then you're going to have a stable individual. And that's what temperament is all about. It's not personality. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, I should let people know that you're not only an airborne veteran yourself, you're a psychologist and an author. And you have it's known as a personality inventory. I don't think that's at all what you would call it. More of it. I know. I'm more of an identity inventory, maybe. A temperament inventory to understand what a person's real basic fundamental temperament is. And everybody has one. and then the character and personality and behavior emerge out of that. We were just talking about that before we went live here. John and I were. Fascinating stuff. But I could see absolutely how your idea about temperament relates to Jason's ministry.
The raw concept that he has is fabulous because it deals with the injured person, and everybody that is in his program is injured. But let's start with the foundation of the person and identify who they are and then build them up. And that's what WIDP does, It
Yeah, and I think
identifies
for
the
what
person.
I've really focused on there is how resiliency to me is that bouncing back. We've all been trained. We in life naturally we bounce back, and our human nature is to bounce back. And unfortunately, with some of the things and tragedies that my brothers and sisters have faced, and even our family members have faced due to our service, they're not sure how to bounce back from that. And I think it is going in and changing the temperament. I study some psychology stuff myself there, John, through a program on military resiliency. And we talk about that, of the fracturing of the mind. And it's just, how your mind, due to the trauma, you have this moment where these little fractures off, and we can bring that back to whole. But it involves that temperament. So
I appreciate your explanation. I'm very familiar with that. I understand TBI very, very well. I'm 100% PTSD myself. I'm 78 years old. I was in Dominican Republic, Vietnam. I was a combat infantry. I traveled. I was a combat engineer, demolition expert. I was in the bush for a year, humping 125 pounds as a demo expert, tunnel rat. I know all about it, okay? So I understand what you're saying, and I come back and I've been working with people for 35 years trying to develop people. And I understand the mind and how people work and how they think. And I understand how to repair them and how to bring them back from damaged emotions to healing them, because I've worked on that all my life. I've spent 37 years doing this, right? That and executive development. I love leadership development. Leadership development is my forte. But I know how to bring people out of pain, emotional pain. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing for our brothers and sisters. And I pat you on the back for that, and I compliment you. You need to come and have a set with me, and I need to introduce you to my instrument, because you absolutely love it. You would absolutely love it.
would love that. Would love to be able to connect.
And you know what? Let's do this. Jason, if you want to put in the chat here on Zoom, the website, rawarrior.org, and your contact information, so the people who want to get involved or want to get hold of you with questions or, want to find out more, they can get in touch with you. And John, you and John can connect then. I took his instrument.
Yeah.
I took his temperament instrument today myself.
You're doing a great work out there. Listen, we're all warriors. We're all brothers and sisters. You cut me, I bleed OD, I'm just a vet. That's all there is to it.
You're just a what?
I'm a vet.
You're a vet.
I want to help my brothers and sisters.
And that's what Jason's doing. Jason, thank you for just giving us a little bit of a glimpse of the work you do. I do hope you'll come back, and I'm going to email you and hope you come back anytime you'd like. But also anytime.
Because I'm going to have to cut back out because I'm actually at school right now on campus. So I stepped out of class to join in for just a bit.
All right. Go back to class.
Thanks for joining us. Now study hard.
Jason, thank you. I'll be in touch. Hey, and I want to say,
in the chat right now.
Okay, thank you for that. And I want to say hi to Don and Carolyn Goss. Hello, Don and Carolyn. I haven't seen you in the longest time. We email and I'll get your emails, but I haven't seen you on Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us. Don is an Air Force veteran, and they attended our in-person events. Hopefully you'll be at our in-person event. I hope on Saturday, August 21st, we have one at Christ Church at Grove Farm on Saturday morning at 8:30. Still no Matt Houston, I don't believe, but I do think that Deborah Benura, you're here. Hello, Deborah. How are you? I'm going to ask you to unmute. Oh, I did. And then I muted you again. Sorry about that. That was my fault.
No problem. Hi, everyone. Good evening on this major, terrible day in history.
Yeah, it's a historic day.
Mm-hmm.
Historic day.
Another Saigon fall in Afghanistan.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what I expected, but I just didn't expect this.
Yeah.
I was in Vietnam in Hue when Tet was 68. When it
That was
fell.
bad. That was bad.
It was really bad.
Deborah, you're an Army veteran, and I know that you are part of the Compassionate Contact Corps for the VA.
Yes. Now, that's correct. And you just took away my notes.
I took your notes. Oh, okay. Well, I will here.
You back
Here are your notes.
Thank you so much. I wanted to bring a program to everyone's attention here because I think you're going to be very interested in it. The Department of Veteran Affairs is sponsoring a VA healthcare volunteer program called Compassionate Contact Corps. They're especially interested in finding other vets like you and me to volunteer with this program. Although the volunteer doesn't have to be a veteran, you just have to be a caring and compassionate person. So when an ill or disabled veteran is isolated with limited opportunities for social interaction, the volunteer provides quality one-on-one interaction by engaging them in meaningful conversation over the telephone. It's as simple as that. This is an official volunteer program of the Department of the Veteran Affairs. Volunteers have to go through an orientation with the VA and pass a background check and be trained there. But there are no medical and no home care duties involved. The way it works is this. Isolated vets are identified by their healthcare provider as someone who would benefit from this type of a program. And if the vet approves, they get matched up with a volunteer. The volunteer makes a friendly phone call 1 to 2 times a week for 15 minutes up to an hour. The schedule is based on the veteran's need and the volunteer's availability. This program doesn't only help the vet, him or herself, it also helps the vet's caregiver who may be overwhelmed. You know, caregivers often ignore their own needs to focus on their veteran loved ones. And these telephone calls give them an opportunity to attend to their own needs, be healthier, and really just have a respite. I think volunteering in this way is perfect for those of us involved here with the BBC. We'll experience the bond of helping a fellow vet and using our unique experiences to connect with them. We'll strike up new friendships and learn from their living history. I mean, it could be simple as reading to them, playing trivia or a crossword puzzle. Hey, introduce them to the BBC, discuss what happened on the last Zoom call. How joyful and how rewarding would it be to identify an isolated vet who might share their story on one of our Zoom calls? How proud would that isolated vet be to tell his story to an interested audience like we are? And how thankful would you be to know that you're using your unique sets of skills and lifetime experience to help vets in need this way? So it's a phone call 1 to 2 times a week to a veteran in need. Show of hands here. Who's interested in something like this? Very nice. Very, very nice. Okay. I have a contact email that I'll share with you. This is the program coordinator for the Pittsburgh area. Now, I've tried to reach her, but I didn't email her yet. I've called and left messages, and I wanted to discuss it with her before I put all the information out there and she doesn't get inundated with phone calls. But I think an email saying that you're interested in the program would be awesome. If you have a pencil, this would be Patty Humes at va.gov. Patty is spelled Patti, period, Hume, HUME at va.gov. Patty.hume@va.gov. You can just call or email her and let her know you're interested in learning more and volunteering with the Compassionate Contact Corps. Did I tell you that the veterans have to go through a background check and an orientation program? And the vet that is in need says, I want to be a part of this. I'd love a phone call from somebody else. I think I skipped over that part. But the vet is fully on board, wanting and expecting someone to call to talk with him or her.
So it's not a cold call.
That's correct. It's
Right.
not a cold call. I
Good.
failed to mention that. But
Good.
yeah, they're identified in their treatment by one of their medical providers.
Right.
That this is an isolated vet who would benefit from this program. And then they tell the vet about it. You know, that says there are vets out there and other people out there who would love to talk with you.
It's a great program. It's fairly recent. I mean, maybe 8-9 months old. I think it was at the end of last year, probably as a result of COVID-19, that the program came about. And it's just a wonderful idea. It's something that we tried early on at the Veterans Breakfast Club, and it's hard to keep up. I think the American Legion has something kind of like that. I put Patty Hume's email address here on the Zoom side. If people want to email Patty and just say that you're interested and you'd like to hear more information on it. And Ellie, if you could put that, transfer it also to the Facebook side, that would be great. Thank you. Rick asks, what is the veteran vetting program?
Well,
background check?
Yeah, background check. And you go through an orientation with the VA. And then you also get a little bit of training, just saying like, this is the way the phone call, you want it to go. You know, you want it just to be a friendly call, to provide some sort of ongoing companionship with that veteran.
Right.
It would mean so much to them.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you very much for sharing that information.
My pleasure.
And again, Patty Hume, the email is here in the Zoom chat, and we'll put it on the Facebook side also. Yes, the American Legion buddy checks, I think they're called. Yes, that's exactly it. Derek, thank you for adding that information. No, Matt Houston. I also was hoping that an Afghan war veteran and OEF veteran, Kim DeFiore, would be joining us. Kim, are you with us by any chance? Kim DeFiore. She's authored a new book, Lessons from Thor. I wanted her to say a few words about it, and we're going to have her back on to talk more fully about it. But I also thought I'd put her on the spot maybe a little and ask her what she's thinking this day. These photos, I'm just going to, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. We're going to get back at it next week. But this is a very striking cartoon. I think you don't even need to read the words. You just know what it's about already. And, there's the parallels are absolutely so disturbing and striking. I mean, that right there, you could kind of squint your eyes and think that's 1975. These people crowding around an airplane. I heard that a C-17 might have taken off with people on it, on the outside of it. You see people getting on a helicopter here in 1975. This is taken today or yesterday. Here's another one today or yesterday. You can see the sense of panic. There's Vietnam. I mean, geez, if you look at it in soft focus, it's really hard to tell what happened yesterday and what happened almost 50 years ago. This is last night. This is the Taliban in the streets of Kabul. This is the NVA in the streets of Saigon. This is the Taliban in an American vehicle. I imagine they have a lot of American vehicles now in Afghanistan. It's just kind of a demoralizing day, and a day when the American flag was taken down at the embassy in Kabul. It's a sad day, And I just thought that some of our veterans might have some reflections on it on this day. Feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand, speak out, put your hand up. Oh, yes, Rick Weber, and then Michael. Rick, why don't you unmute yourself?
I talked to a couple of vets today, and it just tears your heart out. I would love to talk to a person that served in Afghanistan and get their take on it, but I think, this isn't a religious show, but I think everyone should say a prayer for the families who lost somebody in Afghanistan, because this country is lacking leadership at the top. This is not the first time we've done this. This is about the fourth time that we've abandoned people who were our friends. And it's tough. It's tough to put anyone that's been in Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and to see what's happening after we leave. It's either you go all in or you don't go. And that's what leadership, and I think this is another fact that leadership doesn't understand. I feel sorry for these people.
It's hard to hear what you're saying, but it's the truth.
Oh, it tears your soul out.
It's hard to hear what you're saying, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say. I'm like I said, it's a tough day. It's a very difficult day for me.
Thank you,
But
Rick.
I thank you for emailing me, because Hallmark made this a Airborne Day. I didn't know it. I wear my shirt today, Airborne shirt. I must have gotten 10 people say, "Oh, thank you." So yeah, I did wear it. I didn't know it. Hallmark must have come up with this one.
I think the Airborne might have had something to do with coming up with this one. It was on this day 81 years ago, on August 16th, 1940, that 48 members of the parachute test platoon jumped out of C-33s, Douglas C-33s, not C-47s, over Fort Benning, and made the first official jump of their required 5 jumps to get those paratrooper wings. Now, my understanding is not all 48 jumped. There was one wise man who got to that door and he said, "You know what? I ain't doing it." So only 47 jumped that day, that's my understanding. But that is the beginning of the Airborne. And here is these wonderful images here of it. Really does take a special something to look at this guy saluting as he walks off backward, cool as can be. Look at that. And there's a wonderful history to Airborne that maybe we'll talk about. I like that. That's probably my favorite one there. So yeah. So Rick, you think it's all Hallmark. Michael, what were you going to say about what's been happening in Afghanistan?
Yes, unmute.
I'll ask you to unmute. While Michael is working at that. Oh, Chris Perolo, how are you?
Hey, good evening, everybody. It's nice to be with you. Adhering to the rule of not being political, I'll restrain myself because I'm really flipping out. But it's what is happening right now is very, very tragic, and it's irreversible. But what really scares me now is what is in the hearts or what is in the minds right now of the people in Taiwan, South Korea, Israel, or whoever else you can think of, who are counting on us to have their back. This has repercussions across the world that but average persons are not looking at right now, but may come back to haunt us in the next 6 months. So that's what really disturbs me. But the tragic, the repeating of history here is just, it's tragic and sickening.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to say.
Let's go to Ben Wright and then Jeff Witherell. And Ben, Michael. We'll go to Michael, then Ben, then Jeff, then Greg. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Good.
Sorry about not being able to figure out how to unmute this thing. I was about 4 years out of service when Saigon fell, and it was like a tremendous feeling of just sadness. And today, what I'm hearing here is, my God, we're supposed to have learned something. What's going on? And that's basically where I'm coming from at this point. I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. What's going on? How did we get here? And yeah, a lot more to say about that. Ben Wright.
Bob Dvorak has also had his hand up.
Okay, and then Bob Dvorak. I want to go to Ben Wright because Ben, you were there. I mean, you were there
I
literally.
participated in the airlift of refugees out of Saigon in April '75. Last flight out that I made was last day for fixed wing aircraft on April 28th. And I agree with Rick. We need to be concerned about people who are on the ground there in Kabul at the airport now. And in the midst of all that chaos, I was flying in and out of Tan Son Nhut. It was pretty simple as an aircrew member. It was relatively safe. I'm not sure that's the case in Kabul, but even talking to the people who were on the ground, we had a lot of people from our wing that were on the ground supporting that. It was quite chaotic. And, they're looking at civilians that want out. And I mean, it's a tough situation for the military people on the ground there. So we do need to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. And then in keeping with your program tonight about Airborne, I also flying 130's got to airdrop lots of airborne people. And I know the people in the 82nd Airborne know all about the green ramp on Pope Air Force Base sitting in the middle of Fort Bragg, and all about the long drop zones down there that I made many airdrops, and I was glad they were jumping out, not me, but I did everything I could to make sure that when they went out, they were on the drop zone.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Jeff Witherell, you were another airborne. How are you?
Yeah, real fine. Todd, how about yourself?
Good.
I just wanted to say that yesterday was the 82nd birthday. 15 August 42 was when the 82nd was designated from the 82nd Infantry or 82nd Division with Sergeant York, became the 82nd Airborne Division under General Ridgway. And so that happened yesterday. But as regards to Afghanistan, what I reflect on, all my years and everything, one of the big virtues of the military and across all these veterans here in our club is the word loyalty. And it's not only to your country and all your shipmates and soldiers and Marines and everyone, but your families, as well as all the people you deal with overseas, your allies. And that's a big deal. If you lose somebody in that, you're never letting them behind. And in this case here, we should have known. I mean, I said weeks ago, I told my wife, I said, the Taliban will have this place within 6 months. It'll be gone. I said that like a month ago. And it went so fast. I didn't think it was going to happen that fast. But,
I didn't think so either.
No, and it's just one of those things. I really feel bad for our allies because, like Chris said, I worry about Taiwan. I worry about Korea. I worry about all those people that are counting on us. And I don't know if the nation has the will to back them. And I hate to see the next red line at Taiwan, but if I was the Chinese, I'd be right in there. I'll tell you, and I'll bet you right now, just off myself, I would bet you had a Chinese advisor in each one of those darn tribes over in Afghanistan. I'll bet the Chinese are already there.
Oh, you're the second person.
They're going to run Kabul airport within a month, and it's going to be named after Osama bin Laden, that airport.
Jeff, you're the second person who said that to me today about the Chinese. And another thing that you said, and I want to go to Greg Yost next. My smart daughter, Libby, just kidding. Libby is smart. Libby is smart, but Ellie is smart too. But Libby said to me, okay, I'll take that back. But Libby just said to me, this is what 70% of the American people wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted a complete withdrawal from Afghanistan, and they got it. And this is what they got. Greg Yost.
If I may interject, Todd, when you withdraw, which is a difficult situation to get into, but the way you do it is, I mean, every place we've ever left and all that stuff, we've always had a changeover, transition to the next caretakers or whatever it was. You had
you had your reviews, you had the bands, you cased the colors, you walked out the gate. And this place here, I mean, we lost seven bases in a day or two. They just ran out the gate and just said, okay, you got it. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
Yep.
Greg Yost.
There you go.
Definitely, thank you. I definitely view a day like today, or yesterday, or tomorrow, whenever it's going to be, as a definite day of sadness, on the order of the last day. You know, we all saw from Saigon, which I actually remember. Scary thought. I have the gray hair to prove it, but it's very sad in sort of that grand picture sense. But I want to ask, and I'm not a veteran, and I will ask sort of without people wanting to answer this question, you know, and you can certainly answer it if you want, you know, publicly, but that I call it the Norman Schwarzkopf question. And here's the question. Schwarzkopf was in Vietnam twice. He was in there in like 66, 67 or something like that. And he was there later in 70, 71 or something like that. And he thought that when he was there the first time, he thought when he left after his first tour of duty, he thought he made a difference. He thought something was different after he left than when he got there. The second time he was there, he didn't think it made any difference what he had done the entire year, whatever his length of tour of duty was. So I will ask all the veterans at your level of service, and you can answer this, you know, publicly or just privately or think about it or whatever. Did you think that what you did made a difference? And that isn't even a personal question in terms of what you did personally, but what you were doing as part of your mission or whatever. Did you make a difference when you were there for whatever length of time you were there? Even if in the big picture it succeeded grandly or it failed miserably. That's maybe my question for all of you, especially maybe the people today who were in Afghanistan, but broadly speaking, you know, for all the military veterans, do you think that whatever you did somehow made a difference after you left? Was it better after you left than when you started?
This is a great question, Greg. And I would imagine, and I know Steve, I saw Steve raise his hand. I want him to talk. I want Hughes Turner to talk, Pat Hughes, Larry, Don. I want to get to you, but I think about so many veterans that I've talked to. One, Kim DeFiore, who isn't joining us. I hope that she would. She said, I went to Afghanistan thinking that I was going to fight for freedom. I ended up realizing I was fighting for the people around me. And so if you, I think, did you make a difference? Maybe not in the big fight for freedom that she thought she was fighting for, but in that fight for the people around her, she did. Hughes Turner, you were somebody who had a unique perspective on this war. You are a part of it as a staff officer. What are you thinking and feeling today, Hughes?
Wow. Boy, you talk about generational divides. And ironically, Airborne Day, I didn't realize that. But in 1975, last week of April 1975, as a brand new lieutenant, is when I reported to Fort Benning for airborne training. And what played out every evening was the fall of Saigon and the rapid demise of the South Vietnamese army with the onslaught of the North Vietnamese. And I recall at Fort Benning watching all this. And at the same time, we had South Vietnamese officers and Cambodian officers at Fort Benning with us in training. And I remembered at that time, these guys had no place to go back to. They had no place to go back to. And those are things that, you know, kind of resonated with me over this past weekend, actually over the past week, as we watch the things developing in Afghanistan. Now, fast forward to Afghanistan, I remember we had that discussion about Iraqi freedom and how that was connected for me with what we were doing in Afghanistan at the time. But you know, I was part of the first combat elements that went into Afghanistan after 9/11. And I will tell you the type of discussions we had at my level behind closed doors and very candid discussions was what was our purpose. There was no question in our mind that we felt very fortunate to have been part of the first combat elements to go into Afghanistan to get bin Laden. You get the people who precipitated the things that occurred on 9/11. And I will tell you, there were probably two schools of thoughts in terms of academic discussions we had. One was, hey, we're here to get the bad guy, and you kind of take that. There was a Clint Eastwood Western, Unforgiven. I don't know if you remember that. And he goes into town and he sees his bud on display in a casket, as I recall. And he goes in there and kills everybody. And on his way out, he says, anybody who shoots me, I'm going to kill him. And I'm going to kill your wife. And I'm going to kill all your friends. And I'm going to burn your damn house down. That's one school of thought that we had in terms of how to deal with bin Laden and why we were there in Afghanistan. There's the other school of thought, and the type of academic discussion we had was, okay, now that we're here, we do this piece. Are we also in the business of nation building? And what's associated with that? And how long would that take? So that was the type of discussions that we've had. And this has been going on for 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to this weekend, my old sergeant major, my brigade sergeant major, contacted me. And his son is a platoon leader in the 82nd. He's on the ground now at Kabul. And we were reflecting on all this because we remember Kabul and Kandahar and Herat and Shahikot Valley, all these from 20 years ago. Yeah. Now we have a new generation, our kids.
Kids, yes.
Are now on the ground dealing with the mess that we've created. Now, there are probably enough rocks to throw at a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm probably of the school of thought that every POTUS, starting with Bush and Obama and Trump and Biden, have a part in all this. They all have a part in this. And I'm not one to say, well, it's because of Biden or it's because of Trump or it's because of Obama or Bush. I mean, they all had a hand in this.
There's a lot of blame to go around.
So, and also military commanders. I mean, there's a reason why we have a division, a separation of civilian authority over military folks. And I personally subscribe to that. But I don't know ultimately what the right answer is. I think at the end of the day, the sentiments I feel today are the same sentiments I had in 1975 when I reported to Fort Benning, just looking at, well, these poor SOBs, they have no place to go. They helped us, and we're doing very little to help them.
Right. They've lost their country.
Yeah. And that's what I'm wrestling with right now. Oh, I'm sure we'll sort this out, and this will be studied for the next decades, what went right and what went wrong. But to the gentleman that asked a question about how some of us vets felt in terms of our commitment and what we contributed, I think we've evolved to the point, unlike Vietnam, where we respect the deed of the warrior. Whether or not we agreed with the policy.
Yeah.
I certainly have tremendous respect for the warriors. And that the commitment that he or she have made in any war was out of patriotism and the need to, and the real feeling that, hey, I'm here to serve my country. And regardless of the outcome, I did what I thought I had to do and take great pride in it.
Right.
And in most cases, most of us, even in our small little circle, have made a difference somehow. So that's kind of where I fall out on this, and I'll shut up.
Thank you so much, Hughes. Thank you. And sometimes you don't know the difference you've made until months, years, decades down the line. Larry Woods? Larry?
Yeah, yesterday, Andy Niggett and I exchanged emails about this, and we copied Todd on it. And I think we both not only heart sick, but stomachs upset and everything else. And today on Facebook and a couple of other platforms, I was able to contact some of the Iraq vets and just, commiserate and, just tell them how much we feel their pain.
Yeah.
And first thing this morning at breakfast, my wife looked at me and said, "You guys are going to have to your work cut out for you to help these guys get through this." And I really believe that that's something that we need to do. I think some of the change that took place, the gentleman that just got off that was talking about the vets that that are current vets are getting more respect. I think part of that is because the Vietnam vets said never again. And I think that it's going to be that kind of mentorship and that kind of commiseration, because these guys are going to be, men and women are going to be suffering survivor's guilt for those that they lost in Afghanistan and in Iraq for that matter. And with what's going on now, it's like, why? And they're going to need our assistance in just kind of being there. So that's what I wanted to comment on.
Thank you, Larry. Pat Hughes from Texas. How are you?
Very and partly cloudy today. Thank you, Todd. First of all, I'm honored to participate in this August grouping here today. And just so you know, when you had difficulty at recognizing the unit, the airborne unit I was with, we're not as prominent as the 82nd Airborne, but we're the 173rd Airborne Brigade.
Of course, the 173rd, yes.
And we do have a little history going for us as well, particularly during Hill on 875 in 1967.
November.
Doc Toe, absolutely. But I want to get back to the core issue here about this cluster, whatever you want to call it, that happened over the weekend, which wasn't supposed to happen. Yes, I have an opinion and I know what they're like. Everybody has one. And I don't want to get political pursuant to your directive. However, it was time to leave Afghanistan. Let there be no doubt about it. However, I'm a logistician as well as an infantry officer by commission. And this debacle that we saw was a logistical nightmare. It wasn't planned. And from soup to nuts, it was a total disaster and disaster waiting to happen. The current administration and his staff had 8 months to plan this. They knew since January this was going to happen, or I suspect they did. But what we saw this weekend was despicable. And any way you want to cut the Gouda, it reminds me of Vietnam. I was there, and it's a shame. We haven't learned a damn thing. But it's a logistical failure. And I know something about logistics because when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait during Desert Storm, I moved every dependent and their kids from Saudi Arabia back to their home country, whether it was Europe or the United States. And it's a logistical exercise is that's what it is. But this was an abject failure, pure and simple. So that's all I want to say. And it's a shame. And we betrayed our allies, these people that work for us from Afghanistan. We did that also in Vietnam. Let there be no doubt about it. To some extent, we didn't take care of the people that we should have, but we haven't learned anything. History, as you said so eloquently, has repeated itself, and that is a dirty shame.
Yeah, dirty shame. Yeah, we should be ashamed of ourselves. Logistical failure. Also, probably it seems, and this may be too early to say, an intelligence failure.
Well,
if the intelligence, maybe we weren't getting the right intelligence. Maybe we weren't getting the right reports of what the intelligence really was. But we were told that the intelligence was there was some time before the Taliban was going to take the rest of the country. Meanwhile, journalists on the ground were saying, "Oh wow, this is going to happen fast."
Scott, it was it was an intelligence failure, but not getting political. That's what's weird. That's who's guiding this nation today. It is what it is, and we are in harm's way. That's all I'm going to say.
Pat, John Worley wants to get in touch with you. Could you put your email in the chat if you can?
Yeah.
Or John, you could put yours in. Don Nemchek.
Yes,
Thank you, Todd.
Let's hear from the Navy.
Todd, thank you. And thanks all to the veterans today for expressing themselves. And I echo what Jeff Witherow said about loyalty. You know, I talked to some of my buddies after 50 years. We talk every day almost now. We talked at length about this today, how this despicable in so many words that today, this recent actions are. I have my doubts about the intel. I have my doubts about the administration. I refuse to go political as you asked us not to do. But as a veteran, as a Vietnam veteran, I remember 1975 watching it on TV. I was home at that time, and tears came to my eyes.
Yep.
Tears came to my eyes again today.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, Don, and I don't remember the fall of Saigon, but the scenes from today are just, it's crushing that this is like crushing finale to a 20-year war. Jack Morrow.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Jack.
These are the musings of an old man, okay? Why are we taking blame in this? These countries lost faith in themselves and left us to fight their civil wars. We reach a point in time that we can't solve your problems if you don't care anymore. We gave all we could, but you gave up first and left us holding the bag. You are the ones who should feel shame, not us.
Jack, do you know that very much echoes the sentiment that John F. Kennedy expressed in the summer of 1963 with regard to Ngo Dinh Diem, who is in charge of South Vietnam. It's often quoted, it's often shown. He did an outside interview with Walter Cronkite in which he said, you know what, we could help, we could train, but in the final analysis, it's their war and they either need to win it or lose it on their own. And I mean, it was prophetic in a sense. And I, you know, Ellie and Sean we were talking with an OEF veteran this morning, a Marine, who said, you know what, in Afghanistan, there's an AK-47 in every cupboard, in every home. And there just weren't enough Afghans who wanted to resist. There just weren't enough Afghans who were willing to fight this. Larry, I don't know if you still had your hand up or not. Larry Woods? No. Bob Dvorak?
Hi, Todd. And I come at this as a historian like you do, to continue that Santayana quote. Those that do know history are doomed to stand by and watch other people who don't know history repeat it. And everybody says we don't learn our lessons. It was only 50 years ago. That's my lifetime.
Yeah.
We'll never let this happen again. This could never happen. And I'll go back. I think, one, we had to go because of 9/11. Taliban controlled the country and gave harbor to Al-Qaeda. Okay, you had to take them out. That's done. Now, nation building, I'm sorry, does not work, never will work. Take it off the table. Build an army out of nothing. Give me $1 trillion in 20 years, I'll get you an army that I can't say it's going to take the hill. It's not going to do anything unless there's military leadership and somebody that inspires these people to stand up and fight for themselves. If they don't do that, then we could stay there another 20 years and spend $4 trillion. It's not going to make any difference. My heart goes out to the people in Afghanistan, the women and the young girls who said, okay, now you're free. You can get educated and you can be part of society. You don't have to wear a veil. You don't have to cover up. And that was good for 20 years. And now what are you going to do? Tell them to cover back up again?
Yeah.
We just condemned a whole bunch of people to death. And it's not right. It's a big crap sandwich and without the bread. I'm enraged, but I was enraged a long time ago about what we were doing there. If we're in Afghanistan, we take down the Taliban and Al Qaeda, and we got to get bin Laden. But before you get bin Laden, you go fight another war in Iraq. And they pulled assets out of Afghanistan to go fight in Iraq, and like weakened both fronts, both postures. I mean, you could go through this as a case study in policy failure and strategic failure. And my God, the men and women who went over there to protect us, to do the best they could for America. I'm heartsick, and if, God forbid, if a family lost someone, what they're feeling now. And if you were wounded, or even if you just sweated and sacrificed. But the big difference between Saigon and Kabul is you're not blaming the American serviceman or woman for policy failures and giving them the cold shoulder when they come home.
Right. Exactly.
Embrace Afghanistan and Iraq war veterans, and hey, start planning for a parade, because they did what they were supposed to do. They held up their end of the contract. We can't walk out on them either.
I said one of the emotions that was stirred is fury, and I think you just heard it in Bob's voice. I want to go to Jim Roberts and Chris Perolo, and we'll go back to Jeff also. Jim.
Hi, Todd. First, thanks for doing this. I had a different experience because I was an advisor. I lived with the Vietnamese.
Yes.
And I talked to the other three MAT team members that you had together some months ago. And we have a couple of things. One is that if you'd have talked to us, we would have predicted this fall as quick as it was. Because we having worked with the troops, I think we knew how it was going to go.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me is we just said we need a parade. The two things that bothered me was, one, how we were received as veterans. It took a while for that to percolate. But the other thing that really hurt was some years after the war, listening to people say the war wasn't worth it. And what that meant was my service wasn't worth it. And the 58,000 names on the wall in Washington, D.C. were a waste. You're not going to have a parade for the Iraq and the Afghanistan people because we didn't win the war. And what's going to hurt the veterans even more than watching Afghanistan fall is when people start saying how this was a waste of a war, because that means they wasted their time, the wounded wasted what they lost, and the families wasted the soldiers that died. And that's going to be probably even harder to deal with mentally for the Gulf War veterans than watching this country fall. And I don't know how you prevent that, but there's more coming down the road for them that they're not aware of yet, because that's going to be hard to take, and there's no answer to it.
There's no answer to it. I remember a while ago, years ago, I mentioned that to somebody I saw on the trolley that I work with veterans, and that I was, talking to a Iraq War vet, and this person on the trolley said they should have never been there. And I thought, oh gosh, I don't want to betray them, but I thought, like, I agree, but that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is, like, what did they learn? The point is to talk to these vets, to find out what their experiences have been. All right. I'm sorry. Don't want to talk too much. Jeff Witherell.
I was just going to, first I was going to put a shout out to Pat Hughes. The 173rd, I think, was the last mass drop in history, was in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne.
That's right.
I think they dropped the whole brigade out there.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Before my time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that was Junction City. I think that.
Junction City.
I think that was the drop. And but I was going to say, when you asked the question about did people feel that they accomplished something, I had the opportunity as a contractor to be in Iraq, and with our system and everything, I was out there with the 4-9 infantry regiment, the 4th of the 9th regiment. And when you talked about nation building, we weren't in the nation building. We were there to accomplish the mission, and that was to get the bad guys out of the villages and everything. And we didn't have to do anything for the people. We didn't have to put up houses or anything. All we had to do is get those bad guys out of there. They started coming out, getting on the street, playing soccer, opening up their businesses and everything like that. And they were happy. I mean, they were great. And we went through one village after the other and cleared them and everything like that. And then we went up to Tikrit and started working that village also, that city. And so we didn't do any nation building, but I thought we accomplished a heck of a lot, because we could see the difference in the people, and they were actually telling us where the bad guys were. They didn't want them in their villages. So at the village level, and probably the people that were in Vietnam and these other places probably could see it at the village level that you made a difference, but at the higher level, it probably didn't rub off at those, those higher administrative areas. But at the villages, I thought we were doing pretty good over there. And that was 07, 08 when I was there during the surge. So
to add a piece of that, he's right, because working at the village level, we improved things and the people appreciated that. And we got our intel thanks to what we had done. And this is a work with the with the Marines and their Patrol Their Civic Action program, and it worked for us. And I, like you said, I don't know if it went up the pipe high enough because it worked in Vietnam and worked very successfully. The MAT team effort was really a fantastic effort. Right. And why didn't they start that? The military must have lost that because they didn't start that 20 years ago. Right. They didn't start that kind of activity 20 years ago. And so if, the whole, just like you say, we're destined to repeat what we do. Do they study the recent wars, or they only stop at the Peloponnesian War? I mean, I don't know what's going on, because if you'd have talked to any field veteran, line veteran from Vietnam, they would have told you this was going to happen 10 years ago. Oh, yeah. And so where were the top brass in all this? I agree there was a political problem, but the top brass are supposed to plan for contingencies. That logistics plan should have been planned by the top brass, whether the politicians wanted it or not. What were they doing? To me, this
asleep at the wheel.
Brass failure in Vietnam. I mean, in the Pentagon.
Chris Perolo, you were going to say something.
Yes, I want to make this point, and I think you and Bob touched on it in a way. Everybody on this call and everybody who can hear this, the American service member has never failed the people of this country or the flag or the Constitution. No matter what conflict you're a part of, never have we failed to do our duty and defend this country. One of the lessons being repeated, or one of the mistakes being repeated here, one of the ghosts coming back from Vietnam is that the policymakers, the politicians, the intellectuals, you go down the list,
come here,
who by Constitution, yes, are the ultimate authority. They seem to be the ones who always steer the country in the wrong direction or do not listen to the wise advice of experience. So no matter what, how young you are, from Julia, over 100 years old, to the youngest veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, must be proud of their service and know they are not responsible for the things that we're seeing today. That's it, period. And that's a message we need to stand by.
Beautifully put. Beautifully
and the enemy
put.
Wins. The enemy wins when we lose heart and confidence in the people of America to put on the uniform and continue to do the duty, no matter how ugly this thing is that we're seeing right now.
I want to ask Sam Stevens. I believe it was Sam Stevens. Ellie, you might be able to, or Sean, you might be able to confirm this. I believe Sam was at one point, had his hand up and had a thumbs up. And I got the sense, I don't know Sam, but I got the sense that he may have served in OEF. And if he wants to unmute himself and talk, would welcome his participation. Does anybody else want to chime in on this?
Rick Weber.
Rick Weber.
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay. I have basically two things, and probably to this day, I am still bitter over Vietnam. Not the troops, as this gentleman just said. These young 18, 19-year-old kids performed magnificently. However, they were lacked in leadership, and I do not have any respect for the military leadership above captain. My best friend Joe Mancuso is a lieutenant, is a colonel, and he knows it. So my take on Vietnam, and somebody said, "What were you fighting for?" Yeah, basically we were fighting. And somebody said, "What did you gain out of it?" After a lot of soul searching, I was glad I went to Vietnam. I thought I made a difference, not for Vietnam, not for the country, but for the people, because I would not sacrifice my men for that country. Now, when we were attacked, we did things. I followed Sun Tzu from back 3,000 years before Christ, who said, if you cannot win, do not attack. And so we didn't do that. And I feel bad for these young guys that are still in the military, less than 0.5% that have to go back, and they have been just kicked in the, well, I won't tell you where, you know where.
The teeth.
And so they are a lot lower than that. They are still in the military, and they are going to be requested to do a lot of things. You know, some of these politicians say, oh, we'll send these troops in. How many troops do you have left? And what kind of loyalty have you given them? Absolutely none. And I think this is a failure of leadership from the very top military, as the gentleman said, but more importantly, the upper level. We haven't learned a thing. So if you're going to go to war, like World War II, you go to win it. If you're not going to go to win it, don't go. Because what's going to happen in Afghanistan, everybody knew it was going to happen. It's going to happen in every country we go to. We're not going to stay. Now, here's the other thing. How would you like to be a recruiter today, going into colleges and high schools, and tell these young people, the military is the greatest thing you can do. You're going to learn. You're going to learn respect. You're going to learn loyalty. You're going to learn, you're going to serve for your country. And to me, that is the biggest disservice, because it's a lie. And they lied. Anyone who went to Vietnam was lied to. Everybody knows that. The guys that went in '66 and airborne units, they said when we left, we were winning. When I got there, we weren't winning. And when we left, we know we weren't winning. And we knew what was going to happen. Everybody was there in '69 and '70 knew what was going to happen. I feel so bad for the military today, because you can't, 20 years from now, same thing might happen. How do you tell these people that they did a good job when they come home? So,
Rick, I've known you for a while. That is the most candid that you've ever talked here in our forum.
yeah,
I hope
well,
people were listening.
I just think it's a shame. The military, you're asking people to go put their lives on the line to defend not only the flag, the country, for people they don't know and don't want you there to begin with, most of them. And yet, when you do that, then after a while, you get to learn these people, these customs. I have the utmost respect for the Montagnard people. They were the most terrific people I've ever worked with. I didn't work with MACV, so I can't say that. But those people would take you into their house. Their families would give you food that your kids wouldn't even eat. And to leave these people is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. I like I said, I have, just like that guy's tears. I am upset. And I don't have anybody upset with. I mean, I know who I'm upset with, but there's nothing you can do about it. You know?
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at your words. I'm
No, I
laughing
understand. I understand.
No, you don't, because I'm laughing at the chat here in the Zoom. You said that you didn't trust anybody over captain. Pat Hughes said he didn't trust anybody over major because he was a major.
Okay,
and I want to remind people.
Like I said, okay, well,
I
they
want
don't
to
have any
remind.
command. Majors don't have any command. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, major
Right.
can't come in.
We've got a lieutenant colonel right here. We have a colonel, full bird colonel. Hughes Turner.
But don't forget, back then they weren't that ranked. Okay.
Yeah, but they're politicians.
You hear that, Hughes?
Okay, so basically,
We've got Jeff Witherall. Jeff, you
I
are.
love Jeff. Jeff is a good friend of mine.
I was only a lieutenant colonel, but okay.
Yeah, but Jeff's a good guy. Okay. And I just want to say this to you, Jeff. Teddy's getting in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, he was a heck of a guy. I'll tell you.
So
great guy and great center linebacker. I'll tell you.
So anyway,
right.
like I said, I'm sorry I got upset, but like I said,
Rick, this is wonderful.
terrible.
This is a wonderful conversation, a much needed conversation. I know that we plan to continue it. I want to go to Greg and Jeff, but I want to also say, I'm looking at the clock. It's about almost 8:15. Next week, Sean and I were talking. We thought we would continue this conversation and really try and reach out to veterans who served in Afghanistan to hear what they have to say about this. It's one thing for us to feel what we're feeling and think what we're thinking. Boy, I cannot imagine what it must be like to have served, to have a family member served, to have been wounded, to be a Gold Star family member of somebody who served. What are you thinking now? Greg Yost?
Wow. Okay. I'm the theoretician here, so I hate to sort of go big or go deep or whatever, but I'm going to make two broad points. One is a theoretical argument about the United States, and it has been observed by many sociologists, whatever, that one of the most democratic institutions in the entire United States is the United States Army. And that is, you're talking about, you're dragging people in from all parts of the United States, from all classes, and you put them together and you accomplish your mission. Unlike the Navy, where it's sort of the captain is the ship, right? So there's that one deal there. And it has been observed that the people who actually run the United States Army are actually the sergeants. They're not, okay, I see a couple of head shakes here. That's actually really cool. Even from officers, they will sit there and say, when like the people who are drafted and they rise to the rank of sergeant or whatever, they've been in long enough and they've accomplished a certain amount of competence or whatever. Today is the anniversary of the death of Elvis Presley, drafted in the United States Army, who attained the rank of sergeant. So Sergeant Elvis Presley, I salute you. And he attained that rank. He didn't sort of just like work to, he didn't just, celebrity to that rank. But anyway, so there's a notion of the United States Army as being very democratic in a very significant way, with Elvis Presley as a very good example of sort of that notion. And I want to go, maybe this is sort of related in that, because I'm going to go below the rank of sergeant here. And I'm from the North Hills, and there's a local watering hole that I attend, or sort of for a variety of reasons. I ran into a bunch of old high school friends there, and but sort of meet the person in the street there. And I was there one time. I was there many times. That's not a good admission, but I was there many times. And I was there one time in the late aughts, right? And I saw a person there who was talking about his military service, and his buddies were buying him drinks. And I think it was a graduate of the local, in fact, he was a graduate of North Hills High School, and he seemed like he had signed up. I don't think this guy was even old enough to drink, but he had come back from Iraq, right? So he was talking about his service in the military and his machine gun status or something. And when his friend sort of left, I sort of went up to him a little bit afterwards, and he mentioned a couple of sort of ugly things. And one of which was, this is like 2007, right? 2008. He said, you could always tell where the fire was going to come from, because for no apparent reason, a whole bunch of kids would go out in the street and play soccer. And you could see that that's where the fire was going to come from, because they knew we wouldn't fire in that direction. Just the ugliness of war. Right. And this is a guy who's not even old enough to drink. He's 20 years old, right?
Right.
So this is around the time of the surge. And I say, so what do you think of the surge? Because he had been on a rooftop and his buddy had died, and he was trying to shoot a machine gun. He was trying to CPR his buddy back to death and stuff like that, back to life, but his buddy died. And I said, so what do you think of this big surge thing? He said, yeah, should have been done long ago. Wish we'd done this long time ago. He was one of the people who literally could have lost his life had the U.S. really committed itself to a military significance that would have kicked their butts, right? So what do you guys think of that? I mean, like, the veterans who were there, had there been either globally speaking or locally speaking, really significant military actions that would have straightened out the situation, but not cost you your own life or other large numbers of people your life, but would have straightened things out. What do you think of that? The notion that go in, kick their butts, straighten things out, even if it would have cost you your life or your good friends your lives.
Everything has a cost. Yeah, we could have avoided this fate, but it might have cost, or would have probably cost many more lives. We could have had it been like South Korea, where we'd stay for 50 years. Is that what we want? These are all good questions. Jeff Witherell?
I was just going to say, the one thing that's ironic about the whole discussion when we talk about learning from history was after Vietnam, and then a number of decades later in 1991, when we had Desert Storm, I was on active duty at the time. And the big concern was we better not have another Vietnam. We're going to go in there and kick ass and get out of there and all that. That was the whole idea of 1991 Desert Storm. And that's what we did. I mean, the Army went in, the Navy, everybody went in there and knocked them out of there. And then we left. We got out of there. And we knocked out like 10 divisions of the Army right after that. We dropped from 28 divisions down to like 14 divisions in that after the war, the 4-day war. But we remember from Vietnam, but then all of a sudden here we get into Afghanistan, and all of a sudden we get into this nation building idea, and we're going to stick around for 20 years, instead of just going in and clean them out and say, all right, guys, you got your country back. Okay, let's get out of here.
How that would have worked in Afghanistan, Jeff, would have been to get, Osama bin Laden, get Al Qaeda, maybe topple the Taliban from power to get that, and then remove yourself.
That's right.
And kind of keep policing maybe Afghanistan. Let's see, Derek Sansone. You are one of the few OEF, OIF veterans we have here. Navy CB, what do you have to say?
Well, as a CB in Iraq, and I was there in the very beginning in 2003, not Desert Storm, after the major combat operations ended, and I never really cared for that term, we were involved in nation building or town building or community building. We worked at police stations, hospitals, schools, water treatment facilities. We even built a soccer field for kids in the port city of Qasr. It was mentioned earlier about, that work that's done at the low level on the ground that maybe doesn't get noticed at the higher levels of command or politics or the media. But I remember the look on some of these people's faces, some of these Iraqis, regular people in the villages trying to live their lives in a tough situation. And I'm convinced for a very short time, we made a small difference in their lives, maybe not at the national level in Iraq, but, that was the level that I was on. And, other people have made the points, when your boots are on the ground, it doesn't matter what your name tape says. It's the 21st century. We all work together, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, when your boots are in the sand. And, we follow our orders. We're given our mission. We don't control where we go or what we do. The only thing we can control is the job that we do. And, to be able to look at ourselves and our family when we come home and say, I did my mission. What's way above my level is not in my control.
Wonderful. Thank you, Derek.
Todd?
Yeah.
If I may chime in. I've been with the VBC for over a year, and I count myself very lucky today, because Todd and I were talking earlier about what was going on. And I said, I feel woefully ill prepared for how I'm supposed to feel about this. I didn't understand watching it and being shocked by it, but being not a veteran and sort of just understanding what's going on in the veteran space, the military space, in your minds. And I feel like tonight is probably the most education I think I've received over the course of the last year. I really am thankful for everybody's honesty, because the things that I've heard everybody talking, it not only helps me understand where we are as a nation, it helps me understand what you all have been through. And I've gotten to know a lot of you over the course of the last year. And it breaks me up, because I see you guys hurting, and that sucks. That really sucks. And I just want to say thank you for helping to educate me and help me to understand what you guys are going through. Because I'm going to have this conversation next week And it's really difficult for me to even think about what the Afghan vets are going through.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Sean.
Sean,
I feel the
Sean.
same. Yeah, Chris Perla.
Sean and Todd, you are not veterans, but you are human beings. And at the heart of every human being is compassion and empathy. And therefore, you have the essential element of every American service member to be compassionate and empathetic. Otherwise, how do we go across the sea to help other people without those elements? So yes, you don't have the uniform, but you can feel the heartbreak and the emotion of what we are witnessing. So don't sell yourself short. You're absolutely where you need to be.
It's heartbreak. That's the first word that came to me. I felt heartbroken when I saw those images last night. And here's the other thing I thought. We as Americans have short memories. When a week from now, you might have half the country or more not even thinking about this at all. This is going to be off the front pages. We're going to move on to something else. There'll be the recriminations. And most of the country will go through the rest of their lives without thinking much about it, except those who served in this era. And that is going to be with them the rest of their lives, just like it's with so many of you who served in Vietnam or in the Vietnam era. It's still with you today over 50 years later. The emotion of Rick Weber talking about his service, or of Pat Hughes or Jim Roberts. It's just striking to me how this is something that sticks with you. And I think that's what, Sean, you're kind of getting at. And this is what I've been learning too, working with veterans, is you have the veterans experiencing the world and everyday life, and then you have the rest of us experiencing the world and everyday life, and sometimes they come together and sometimes they're very different.
Well, I was saying to Ellie here in the chat that the conversation that we are having is so important for just for people that aren't here. And I would love for us, VBC, to reach out to those who spoke tonight and ask for permission to be able to create something that helps to educate the non-veterans who come to VBC and are looking for some level of answers, because I think the wisdom that has been shared tonight really gives clarity to what we should be feeling.
And my only regret is that we've said nothing about Airborne. No, my only regret is here it is, National Airborne Day, Airborne Birthday, that Rick thinks was a Hallmark holiday. I think it's a real holiday.
Well, I didn't know anything about it, Todd. I'm not saying it wasn't, but if you wouldn't have sent it to me, I didn't know about it. You're the historian. And I asked 4 people today, do you know what today is? And you know what they all said? Monday. I said, it's a national holiday. They said, what? I said, it's national. And these guys are all airborne, and they didn't know it.
But for example, I think, is Bill Prizzuti on this?
Yes,
Bill, is that you? Yeah, there you are. See, you're airborne. You don't join us very often, but I hear you are. You came on because you're airborne and you want to talk about airborne, and we haven't said a damn thing about it.
Amen. You know what? I go back to the days in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and we used C-119 boxcars, okay? Yep. And for those that aren't familiar with the C-119 boxcars, that's the twin tail, and the boxcar opened the back doors. Now, they also had side doors, okay? So for those of you that were in the airborne, you would know what the term stick means.
Yeah.
And we had a stick in each side, and I'll tell you what, the last guy pushes the first guy as hard as he could to get out, okay? Yeah. Because that's all the closer you are to the trucks that pick you up.
Right.
But, you had good conversation this evening. Thank you, Todd. That's a nice picture. Yeah, we've had good conversation tonight, but I recall when I was a young boy or young guy at 19 years old, we got orders to leave Fort Campbell, and we were in Homestead Air Force Base right outside of Miami. And our mission at the time was doing the Cuban crisis. We were told that we were going to jump into Cuba.
Wow.
That's a long time ago. And again, I was a 19-year-old kid that didn't even know where Cuba was. Okay. But I still think about the issues that we talked about tonight in Vietnam, Saigon, and even into Afghanistan. And it's a total shame, because whoever said it best tonight is that, look, we're all vets, we're all brothers in this thing. And Todd, thank you for the couple of minutes you've given me to talk about this, but 101 all the way.
101 all the way. Thank you, Bill. I'm so glad you joined us. Mark Spiridigliosi.
Just a couple of things, Todd, real quick. Bill, if I'm behind that guy, he's going to have to push me with both hands, both feet, and a Mack truck right behind that because I'm not getting out of that plane.
Well, don't the jump sergeants have the revolvers there or the pistols
Yeah,
there?
they're going to be pushing a corpse out, not a live human being, number one. Number two, I just wanted to make a quick comment on what Greg Yost said about asking yourself if you made a difference. You know, I've been back from Vietnam for 18,980 days, and I've never asked myself that question. You stirred a thought process within my brain, Greg, that I think that every veteran on here needs to ask themselves that question and see if they deep, and believe me, I feel like I made a difference, if for nothing else, for myself. So thanks for those thought-provoking words that you put out there, Greg. I appreciate it.
Oh man, this is so great. Greg, what were you going to say? What do you have to say to respond?
Basically the same thing that in the grand scope, I am not a veteran, but when I look in the grand scope of things, I look at all of you who were veterans, who are veterans, and say that, somehow in the great scope, somehow I'm going to say that my ability to sit here in front of this Zoom camera with this fake background of the beach here somehow is some grand part. And I don't want to say that, had you not done this, it would have been different, but each one of you in a small way contributed in some small way to this great picture that we're all appreciating. I was at a public library one time and I was talking with a Korean War veteran who was an infantryman, who I didn't like this guy, but nonetheless, I started to come to like him. And I found out later he was a Korean War infantryman. And I took him back into the library and I dialed up the night picture of the Korean Peninsula at night between North and South, where North Korea is completely dark. Nothing is going on. South Korea, Shanghai, Japan is all brightly lit up with all these people celebrating their lives. And I said, hey, in some small way, you, sir, on the front lines in Korea, contributed to this project. And I would like to thank all of you veterans who in some small way contributed to this great goodness that so many people are experiencing, people who you will never recognize, people who never know. Thank you so much. There it is. All the people who stood in those front lines in Korea can see that front line that they stood on right now, and look at all the people south of that line who are doing what they're doing without any knowledge that they even know who you are or what you did. And all those people north who have no idea what you did or what you didn't do. And look at that difference. Thank you so much for everything that you did. There was a Vietnam veteran who went on, Todd, on your trip a couple of years ago, who came back from that trip and said, you know who lost that war? The North. North Vietnam looks so much like South Vietnam looked 50 years ago. South Vietnam is so totally unrecognizable. I don't know where I was. North Vietnam is like a time machine. It's a time warp. They lost the war. All those people who stood there in South Vietnam, many of you on this call, somehow that world in South Vietnam is so different today than what it was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I want to go to Deborah, but it's kind of like being a teacher. You never know what impact you made. Often you don't know until years later. You'll run into a student 20 years later and they'll say, you said this in class and it really made a difference to me. You'll never quite know the impact you had or the difference you made, but you did make a difference. Deborah.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciated early on when you showed those side-by-side images of Vietnam, Saigon, and today. And I wanted to say there's another image out there that I mentioned, that I saw today, and it's of the World Trade Center, the tower, and the bodies falling off of the tower. we went into Afghanistan to get bin Laden. So it was about 9/11. That's what we started with. Well, today, that C-130 flew 600 Afghanis out of the country, but people were hanging on to it. I mean, they showed images of the inside packed with people, just heads is all you could see. And people were hanging on to it when it took off. And then, there were 2 bodies that fell. So you put those 2 images side by side as bookend, the beginning and the end. And it's just, it leaves me, I don't know if you're going to object to this, everybody, but it leaves me with a feeling of shame just for the world to see that and to say, America, you don't keep your promises. When our people worked so hard to side by side fighting with those Afghan soldiers, we didn't want to leave them. Our guys and our ladies, we didn't want to leave them. We were told and we had to. And that broke their hearts, I'm sure, to have to get out and evacuate and leave their brothers and sisters there. So there's a feeling of shame that I have from looking at that image today. And I just wanted to say it's healing to listen to all these vets here talk today. And I appreciate you all so much. That's my thought.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. Pat Hughes.
Thank you, Todd. Can you hear me? First of all, I want to say that I'm looking at Derek's comment about the fact that our blood and guts were spilled over there, and that is true not only for Afghanistan, but Iraq and even Vietnam and Korea. However, not being political, of course, as you so respectfully asked us to, it's all about politics in the military-industrial complex. I'm sorry, General Eisenhower brought this up. Dwight Eisenhower brought this up, and those are the facts and are undeniable. The last thing I want to say is that even though you and your team were not veterans, you brought more joy to this damn combat Vietnam veteran than I've had in 20 years. And I just want you to know what valuable service you provide to this community. And I salute you, sir. And I'd want you and your team on my left and right flank. Those are the facts. And I mean it. Out.
Thank you,
Hey
Pat.
guys, thanks for, I'm not a veteran. Thanks for sticking your neck out. I think it made a difference.
What a program. What an evening. Boy, did I get an education. Larry Googans, you have anything to say? No?
No, just repeat what everybody has said, Todd. I've said it before. You, Ellie, Sean, and everybody there. You healed some of us tonight.
Absolutely.
Myself included. I've been very depressed today. I didn't ever had boots on the ground. I was up in the air. Everybody knows that. I didn't go through what most others did, but it was so depressing to see what happened with that C-17 taken off today, and the pictures again that we all showed taken off out of Vietnam. My wife asked me something. How could the pilot take that airplane off? That's a good question, but what choice did he have? Even if there was people hanging on it and he knew it, he had no choice but to save those that were on board.
And he had to come back for another run.
Yeah, and he's going to have to come. They did, and he's going to have to come back. And what choice did he have? Abort the takeoff with all of those people on the runway? He had no choice. And I'll tell you what, Ben did some of this in Vietnam. I didn't. I can tell you what, those pilots on the aircraft right now are crying their eyes out.
Oh, absolutely.
You think nobody, of course, wanted to see someone fall, and most likely to their death. I don't know if they knew it. They know it now. But they didn't want to do that either. They were just saving, I don't know how many, you guys know how many were on board, the hundreds of people that were on board and try to evacuate them. And it brought back one other memory that I hate to bring up. Ben knows more about it. The There was a C5, Ben, wasn't it? With the nurses and the babies on board.
Yeah, the baby lift. There were 300 people on board
Yeah.
that C5 that crashed right outside Tonsanute.
Yeah, trying to get back and land when the rear door blew open. But you know, I'll give you one other thing that frustrates me as a pilot and watching a runway. You know, those Taliban have heat-seeking missiles. It's been talked about. SA-7s is the Soviet version of the Stinger, and they have those. So why didn't we protect that airfield earlier? How did those people, all those people, get on that airfield? Did they not think that they were going to do that? I mean, is there anybody here that didn't think that those Afghans were going to charge that airplane when they saw it? Holy crap. I mean, how can we get it? I mean, that's dumber than a box of rocks. Of course they were going to do it.
Lack of planning.
That's what it is. No plan. There was no plan to evacuate. And that's the sad thing. But anyway, Todd, again, I'll just say, like everybody's repeated, trust me, you're doing more for us than you can ever imagine. And this will spread to the Afghan veterans and Iraqi veterans also. I'll just say one thing. Call somebody. Everybody here, call a friend. Everybody needs, I think, to talk to someone else. We're enjoying ourselves tonight and bleeding our hearts out. There are a lot of them at home right now that don't even want to look out the door or look at anybody. We got to be careful. There are a lot of people hurting right now.
Yep.
A lot of people. So help someone.
Yep.
Thanks, Todd.
Yep.
Again,
I
thanks
agree.
for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Larry. Rick and Jeff.
Todd, I just want to say this. One of the only good things I can say came out of Vietnam, and you heard about it tonight. All these veterans, Vietnam veterans, talk to other veterans today. My closest friends are Vietnam vets. Anyone that says to me I was in Vietnam, they are now one of my best friends. That's what got us through this. And that's what the only thing that's going to get through these Afghani veterans.
Right.
Because we got ranks. You know, I didn't know Larry Woods, but he's a good guy. I mean, once you meet these people and all you have to say, were you in Vietnam? And they say, yes, there's a closing of ranks because we're the only ones that close ranks. And I mean that. You know, any reunion I go to, when I had an OCS class, it was the greatest thing in the world because most of us went there and, you know, we all shared one thing, a commonality. Yeah, we were there. We didn't make a big difference, but we still care about each other 50 some years later. And that'll happen till the day we die. And so that's the only good thing I can say came out of Vietnam for me. You know, and I still respect those that we lost. And I think that's the same. And anyone that's been there knows that what we're talking about, because why do you get such response? And there's sharing, but there's more than caring. You know, and we all said it, Todd. And for those who don't know, Todd is a second lieutenant. At our reunion 2-3 years ago, our class put him through OCS 2369. So he's a second lieutenant. Doesn't get any pay. 2369, that's our class, yes.
It was, you know, every once in a while in a high school, a kid won't actually pass 11th grade, but they want to get that kid out of the school so quickly, they make him a 12th grader anyhow. It's called a social promotion. That's what I got when I got the promotion to lieutenant. Jeff Witherell.
Second lieutenant.
Sorry.
You're still a butterball.
I tried to promote myself there. Jeff.
I was just going to one thing about the lift of those 600. The remarkable thing about taking those 600 plus people out of there, and Ben can correct me on this, but the C-17 is geared for 102 paratroopers and their equipment. That's what they carry, 102. They carry about 150, you know, regular troops and that, but they carry like 102 paratroopers. There's 600 people on there. That's a heck of a load. And I guess I could speak for all the veterans here. The one thing, you know, about veterans, I could say across the board, we're going to show up. And if the country wanted us tomorrow and they needed us back, every one of us that was able that follow on. That's the way it is. And being airborne, I'll be honest with you, they said, well, we need you to jump. I'll jump for that star, that combat star.
I'm sure you would. That scares me, Jeff.
Amen.
I hope your wife would stop you, but she might not be able to.
Jeff, when we were taking refugees out of Saigon, we were putting about 220 people in the back of the C-130. So, it sounds about right to C-117 to do sardine style. And you just load everybody on that you can, and then you close the doors and off you go.
And alive. Okay, well, I want to say a few. Colleen Rumble, you're absolutely right. Other people to reach out to, certainly in these days, would be Gold Star families, families of people who lost, or families of people who had family members wounded, in OEF, OIF, for sure. I want to also say, I want to thank Caleb Craig here. Caleb, you were here this whole conversation. You're a young man. You're not a veteran. You're just like me. And I admire that you would stick with this group as they were expressing themselves. And I'm sure you were getting an education just like we were. So thank you, Caleb, very much. I want to apologize also to Connor Ritchie. I know he had to drop off. I promised I would get to him. We weren't able to get to him. And then I'm going to finally leave you. Oh, first, and then second to last, we do have an in-person breakfast this Saturday on August 21st at Christ Church at Grove Farm, which is on Duff Road, right off Mount Nebo Road, which is right off I-79 here north of Pittsburgh. Would love to have you come. Even if you don't live in Pittsburgh, Mark Spiridigliosi, you should drive all the way to Pittsburgh just to attend the breakfast. It'll be a good time. 8:30 a.m. I know Rick Weber will be there. And
follow the flags, Todd. Tell them to follow the flags.
Follow the flags up to the event barn. The event barn at Christ Church at Grove Farm. It's a great space. Rick has helped to get us that space, so we're going to have a good in-person event. And then finally, I want to leave you with one happy sergeant who received his sergeant stripes and was very, very, I think as Greg Yo said, very proud of being a 3-stripe sergeant. I think he eventually got a rocker underneath with the 3rd Armored Division, the Spearhead Division there. Right, you can see right there he is. Oh, that stripe, it meant a lot to him, and I admire that. I admire that it really did. His Army experience did mean something to him. He did. He felt he got something out of it. All right, guys. Thank you all. Have a good night, and have good weeks. Okay.